Hey everyone, my name's Andy,
And I'm Devin.
and welcome back to
To
False
False
Pretenses. Today we're going to be taking a look into Tammy Faye and Jim Bakker, a couple from the 1980s who were huge televangelists and ended up building about a $125 million empire, which included a whole ass theme park, all the while being tirelessly criticized by preaching the prosperity gospel.
What's this prosperity gospel that you're talking about?
Basically, what they preached was the more material wealth that you had and showed really brought your relationship with God closer and solidified your salvation.
Oh, so the opposite of what the Bible actually teaches.
Basically,
I'm going to love these people.
Jim Bakker grew up in a Pentecostal Assemblies of God household, which saw strict Christian fundamentals which forbade their children from dancing and drinking. Nevertheless, Bakker became a DJ at a local sock hops in the 1950s, where he became acquainted with public performing. In 1959, after graduating high school, he left for Minneapolis to attend North Central Bible College. It was here that he met Tammy Faye. After only 3 dates, the couple was engaged. However, North Central Bible College prohibited its students from marrying during the school term, so the couple dropped out of college to be wed on April 1st, 1961.
Is it me, or do these cases always have these really strange coincidences? I mean,
What do you mean?
You know, their anniversaries on April Fools.
I didn't even notice that, but that's funny because, dude, these people fooled everybody. Jim Bakker began his preaching career in the early 1960s, working as a youth minister at the Minneapolis Evangelistic Auditorium. Soon afterward, he and Tammy Faye left Minnesota to go preach in the Bible Belt, the real money-making zone for preachers. In 1965, the Bakkers settled in Portsmouth, Virginia to work for the Christian Broadcast Network, or CBN for short. As CBN grew, Jim Bakker was made the host of the 700 Club, the network's talk show. Bakker was a skilled fundraiser, but he began to clash with executives as the decade wore on. In 1972, the Bakkers were accused by CBN executives of using network funds for personal expenses. They left the ministry soon after the accusations. After leaving CBN in 1974, the Bakkers returned to the South, settling in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Jim founded the PTL, or Praise the Lord Network. The network's flagship offering was the PTL Club, which was later renamed the Jim and Tammy Show. At its peak in the mid-1980s, the show reportedly reached up to 13 million households and eventually became the highest rated religious show in the United States. In 1978, the Bakkers opened the 2,300-acre Heritage USA theme park and retreat near Fort Mill, South Carolina, which, at its height, was the third most popular theme park in the country, trailing only Disney World and Disneyland.
So you're telling me they made so much money they were able to just build a direct competitor to Disneyland?
Yes, and they siphoned all of this money from their religious viewers, just exploiting their faith and beliefs. However, it wasn't just that allowed them to create this massive theme park. Jim Bakker was first investigated by the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, in 1979 for the misappropriation of viewer donations, allegedly using funds raised for foreign missions to pay for the development of Heritage USA, as well as various personal expenses. Though such misuse of donations would have violated federal wire fraud law, no action was taken against the ministry. In the mid-1980s, Bakker came under investigation again, this time by the big scary bad man, the IRS. The IRS found that Jim had been taking home a salary nearly 5 times the expected amount for a non-profit minister. Furthermore, a 1985 report concluded that between 1980 and 1983, the Bakkers had used $1.3 million in ministry funds for personal expenses. Despite a preponderance of evidence, Bakker was not prosecuted.
So it was obvious he was a fraud, but they did not prosecute.
That's right.
Why?
The Bakker show had a certain regular guest. It was believed that this regular guest really influenced regulators not to prosecute Jim Bakker.
Who could have this guest been?
Ronald Reagan. I'm not joking. It is honestly believed that since Ronald Reagan had a large voter base of elder that enjoyed these televangelistic shows, he didn't want to alienate these voters. So he decided to not pursue and prosecute Jim Bakker.
First, he ruined the economy, and now he lets criminals run free. What's next, Ronald?
After dodging charges for Jim's obvious fraudulent tendencies, a new scandal came to light. In 1987, it came out that Bakker had paid an ex-employee $279,000 of ministry money to remain quiet about a 1980 sexual encounter. In addition, it was alleged that Jim Bakker had had multiple sexual encounters with another employee who was a male. And as I'm sure you know, Christians aren't too fond of homosexuals. Jim was wildly condemned by his fellow televangelists after the scandal broke. In March 1987, Jim resigned from PTL and was replaced by another preacher. In 1988, Jim was finally indicted by a grand jury on 24 counts of fraud. In October 1989, he was convicted on all 24 counts, having siphoned $158 million from his religious followers and sentenced to 45 years in prison. However, his sentence was later reduced by an appellate judge to 8 years, and Bakker was released on parole in 1994 after having served less than 5 years. While her husband was in prison, Tammy Faye, who had never been implicated in the crimes, filed for divorce. 4 years after his release, he launched a new television ministry out of Branson, Missouri. He has abandoned the prosperity gospel and begun preaching about the apocalypse he believes is coming. In 2020, he was sued by the state of Missouri for pushing Silver Solution dietary supplements as a preventative or even a cure for COVID-19.
Should have left his ass in jail, to be honest.
Absolutely. If there's really not too many things in this world that I hate more than greed, but fear-mongering is one of them.
What an absolute douche.
Yeah, he's a scumbag. And he's still doing the same thing, you know? Maybe he's not stealing the money anymore, but it's really not too much different in my eyes.
So how did Tammy not get indicted? How did she just get away with all of this?
She definitely knew. And if you ask anybody that was alive during when this case was going down, they'll tell you. She fucking knew. There's no doubt about it.
I mean, you don't just miraculously end up with $158 million.
Exactly. And you don't directly benefit from the lifestyle that creates and not have any clue of what's going on.
It's not just a miracle from God.
Tammy Faye wasn't just popular for being Jim's wife. She became wildly known for using heavy makeup, especially for applying large amounts of mascara, which would flow down her cheeks as she broke down in tears on camera while making prayerful appeals. She was also tirelessly criticized by always presenting herself with flashy jewelry, fur coats, and designer clothes. She loved the money and the attention. However, Tammy did have a bit of light in her heart. In 1985, at a time when many people were fearful and judgmental of those infected with HIV/AIDS, she drew attention with her compassionate live interview with Steve Peters, a gay pastor living with AIDS. During this groundbreaking broadcast, Tammy tearfully observed how sad that we as Christians, who are to be the salt of the earth, who are supposed to be able to love everyone, are afraid so badly of an AIDS patient that we will not go up and put our arm around them and tell them that we care.
It's no surprise that she doesn't have a problem with the gay pastor. I mean, her husband was one. But for real, though, that's some real talk that she laid down. I mean, back then, reaching out, really progressive.
Yeah, I mean, you can respect it. However, I mean, you do have to have like a little bit of professional judgment. You know, she's basically an influencer. Could just be saying that just to kind of like a PR stunt. But
it could have just been for show, for sure.
Might have been. The one thing that we can't forget is that she knew what Jim Bakker was doing, okay? She was a piece of shit too, but don't forget it.
Yeah, that.
After Tammy Faye divorced Jim while he was imprisoned, she would go on to marry Roe Messner in 1993, a wealthy contractor and old family friend behind Heritage USA. In 1996, her new husband was sentenced to 27 months in federal prison for bankruptcy fraud. Tammy would stay married to Roe until her battle with cancer came to an end in 2007.
She probably thought that if she divorced him and got a new husband, she'd be, prosecuted for fraud.
I mean, maybe, but maybe this one was like actually straight.
I guess we'll never know.
You never know. I don't have the facts on that, so.
I will say, though, like, this story low-key pissed me off. If this story pissed you off, too, let us know what you think in the comments.
Yeah, and don't forget to like this video, especially if you enjoyed it. And if you're interested in more fraud-style documentaries like this video, check out the channel and think about subscribing and hitting that bell icon so that you're notified every single time that we upload a new video. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you all for your continued support. That's it for us at False Pretenses. We'll catch you next time. How sweet
Praise the Lord.
the sound
Praise the Lord.
that saved a wretch like me.
Praise the Lord.